Hi, hi, hello, welcome again to Arts Play Radio. A few technical issues, obviously, to start the week, as we are used to right now. I'm Ike Carton, and my co-host is Eskimo Hito, who I'll be talking to in just a moment. I want to explain, for the benefit of anyone tuning in, I'm not sure who we've got at the moment, but both I and Eski are suffering from disgusting colds. So if we sound horrible, I apologize in advance. That's just the way we are this week. It won't be that way every week, but I'm sure you'll be much more interested in what our guest this week has to say. But in the meantime, if I can, I would like to say hello, Eski, and how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. I'm doing good. A lot more nasally than I was when I last spoke to you. I don't know what's happened, but we're getting through it. We're professionals.
Well, that's debatable, but
It's episode 3. It's professionals you get.
Exactly. It's no worse than it was before. So without too much further ado, and assuming I can make you a speaker, I will introduce our guest for this week, the amazing and excellent Jake Zelinger. Jake, welcome.
Hi. Hi, everyone. How are we all doing today?
Excellent, man. Thanks for joining
us. Man.
That's great.
How are we doing?
That's great to hear. Good. I'm doing really good. I'm really enthusiastic to be here right now. I'm really excited about this. I have a lot of excitement. Like, this was the first space I was invited to talk on, so I feel really honored and grateful to be here. So thank you for having me, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Thanks so much for coming on, man. It's we've been fans of your work for a little while now, so we're really excited to have you.
Yeah, so for the benefit of anyone listening now or listening on the replay, can you give us a little bit of an idea about who you are, to whatever extent you are comfortable with, and the sort of art that you make? How would you describe it to anyone who sort of came to you going, what do you do as an artist?
All right, well, I'll start with that first one. I'm an artist. I've been an artist, I think, my whole life, though I've been bouncing around different mediums and modes of which to express that creativity. And I have a background in a lot of different fields. I started off when I was a kid. I was into acting and doing things on stage, and carried that throughout high school and everything with me. And in college, I pursued filmmaking. And after college, I went to work at a film production studio in Los Angeles, and I played around there for a little bit. I've been in bands. I've made music videos. I've done a lot of stuff to express creativity, and I find that the digital work that I'm doing now with NFTs, with the whether it's a still piece or an animation, I find that creative mode right now is just really working for me in a way that other ones haven't before. So I guess if I was to describe myself in a sentence, I'd say that I am an eccentric creative and maybe also a part-time philosopher. And if I were to describe my art and my style to somebody who was asking, I would say that I do digital pop art. If I was to put it very simply into 3 words, I'd say it's digital pop art. Now, diving in a little deeper than that, I like to think of my work as anti-pop. And what I mean by that, and what the name of that collection kind of means to me, is taking the aesthetic and the movement of pop art and what it was when it started and how it's kind of evolved, and using vibrant colors, flashy imagery, and iconic symbols or imagery, whether it's somebody's face or kind of a primitive symbol, using those things, but with pop aesthetics. And then where I get the anti from is like, I like to take things or subject matter or images that I might not usually think as glamorous or as popular culture or as something that you might find like on People magazine or something. And I like juxtaposing those types of images, whether it's like a bombed out city or somebody who's sad, or recently with my work with Twickert has been a sad angel in a bombed out city, and then taking those images and juxtaposing them together with colors and vibrancy and flashiness and sometimes some glitch wave stuff. I find to be I don't know, I'm really like into it right now. I'm really into taking these images that personally I wouldn't consider to be popular, and then portraying them as popular art. I think is fun. That's how I would describe it in the long-winded version.
I find it really interesting because I've been looking at your the different collections, and there is that whole there's a real like end of the world type of feel to it, which I don't really see too much in pop art. But I think it's phenomenal work you're doing at the moment. I mean, what can you just explain your explain how you got together with Twick? He came on the show last week, so we're big fans of his. Can you explain how that relationship came about?
Oh, absolutely. I would be more than happy to. Yeah, the Twick and the interview with Twick was great. I listened on the replay. It was awesome. Twick and I became friends early on in both of our NFT art careers. I discovered him when I broke into the space on Twitter and just started following whoever was popping up under the tags. And I think through Gary V, I found Epic Thundercat, and through Epic Thundercat, I found Twickert, and I was just obsessed with his doodle decks, which were these like skateboards that he was creating,
right?
These still images. And I would just tell him all the time on Twitter, you know, hey, like, I really dig this. I love what you're doing. I think it's awesome. And I would retweet his stuff because I was a genuine fan. And I was finding my own way in NFTs and in my perception. And I still feel this way 100%. I feel like Twick is like 5 steps ahead of me. So when I came into the space, I saw someone who has started creating and started selling and creating what he wants to create. And that really inspired me, and I told him as much. And then through just talking, and you know, we would pick each other's brains about from everything from like manifold contracts to Procreate tools and techniques. We started swapping brushes and paper textures, and then our first collaboration was with some pieces he made when he first got on a manifold smart contract. He made some pieces that were like dead Disney princesses, and that was our first collaboration. He sent me one. He was like, hey, if you're down to collab like and do something with this, I'll put it up there. And that blew my mind. Like, that I consider like a life-changing event, because it was through that then I got to collaborate on the piece for Lux. And the collaboration on the pieces for Lux, I feel like catapulted me on like a trajectory that I didn't necessarily think was possible for me. I was kind of watching Twick do it. I'm like, man, it's possible. I'm watching somebody achieve success. And instead of finding out about them after they have achieved it, and then it looking like an overnight thing, I was able to experience that really closely with Twick and his success. And it was nothing but inspiring. And so he hit me up and he goes, Lux Ether, oh my God, he wants to collab. Like, that's so insane. And I was like, bro, I don't even know who this person is. Like, can you tell, like, is this a big deal? He's like, this is the biggest deal. Like, I was like, oh my God, okay, hell yeah, I'll send him like more than one then, you know, like as a freebie thank you, kind of, because it was like it was almost like my first commission too at that
Mhm.
point. Like it was a momentous, momentous moment for me, and I think for Twick too. And so our relationship there, just like I consider him, and I feel like he considers me, and we've said it a couple times, like he's like my rock in Web3. If I'm confused, if I'm scared, if like I find out something cool and new or like whatever, like he's the guy I'm talking to. He's like the first person I'm talking to. We're always commiserating or talking about strategies or whatever. But our relationship basically started with his doodle decks, and and just me being a really big fan.
I mean, that's a wild transition from like the doodle decks. I think he's telling us that he did that like when he was in hospital, like he just did it on his phone and put it out. And that's a wild transition from doodle decks to was it Angels and Demons? You went straight to that. What did you work on? Did you work on something in between?
Yeah, so we worked on some dead end stuff of his in between, and then to get to Angels and Demons, we were chatting one day, and I've been told by quite a few people, and I totally respect this. I'm finding my own like kind of routine with it, but I've been told that supply and demand is a very real thing, and that my output is too much. And I'm like, I can't really control my output. I can control how much I mint, right? That's an easy, it just won't mint it. But like when the lightning bolt hits me, man, I'm making the art. And I was talking to Twig about that because he has the same, issue, because him and I can be up all night making art together or just chatting while we're doing it or whatever. And so I said, what we should do, man, is we should just make a collection that we both own and that is separate from our stuff, that is just like, and we can make art and just dump it in there. And he's like, I'm super down for that. And our original idea was something like two dudes who are friends that like to make art made a collection, and we were going to like title the collection that, which you can see that kind of long-winded titles kind of transitioned over to the collabs with Steve Rowe and the 3GB. But when we started collaborating on Angels and Demons, we didn't necessarily know that's what we were doing. We were just making things. I would make something and I would send it to him. He would do something on it and send it back. And we just did this for fun. And I got pretty hyper focused on the images of angels and the images of cities, and taking like these cities at night or these kind of industrial looking images and juxtaposing them with angels or beings with wings. It doesn't necessarily have to be angels, but they had wings. And then I would send them to him and he'd send them back, and he would have like glowing halos and stuff like that. And we just were making Angels and Demons. And so I said to him, look at the volume of work we've made. We had about 10 pieces, and the majority of them were either an angel or a demon or some variant of the two. And I said, look at what we've made. Why don't we lean into this and call it something like Angels X Demons, and we can take the 3 or the E and flip it to make it a number 3 so that it's consistent with Twix branding. And that's how Angels and Demons started.
That's awesome.
Cool, man.
Yeah. It's your stuff has a kind of a both of you actually have this sort of immediate sort of vibrant thing, but there's this kind of edge of a sort of melancholy at the same time as it feels really upbeat. Is that a sort of vibe that you go for, or does that just come out?
It's, that's a really good question, and I would say that it depends on the piece. There was a quote that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks that went something like, art should be dangerous, and when art is not dangerous, it ceases to be wanted. And so I got in my mind dangerous art, dangerous imagery, and taking vibrancy and what would normally be used to draw attention to something like very positive or very energetic, and then add the melancholia to it. creates like that is a direction I like to go in. If it happens in a piece organically, then it does. And a lot of the stuff that we do and a lot of stuff that I do, especially with my animations, just comes out organically. But going into the piece, there's always the intention of like, okay, like especially with Angels and Demons, I want a nasty looking city. I want something industrial or urban or something that just looks like it's awful. And I want a giant like being, whether it's a demon or an angel or a devil or whatever, kind of occupying this space and kind of going through it, whether they're just smoking a cigarette or if they're sad about it. And so the intention for Angels and Demons is always to create this dystopian world where where something clearly has happened to the cities, you know, and we definitely lead with that intention. But it varies piece by piece.
So aside from the aesthetic, I mean, is there, well, am I reading this wrong? But there does seem like a big sense of anger or even protest within like that collection. Is that something that is that something you planned, or is it literally just you're going for the aesthetic? Is there an overriding, message? I suppose that's a horrible word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I get you, and that's fine. Choice of wording, because our message isn't necessarily one we've like written out, but it's the idea that something's wrong, like something happened and something's wrong, and like I personally try to find in a lot of my work, like how can I highlight my own thoughts, not necessarily my own like socio-political beliefs, but like my own observations of life and like things I feel like maybe were good ideas at the time but have worn out due to disrepair or whatever, whether it's a city or the industrial system as a whole. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's a protest. I wouldn't call it protest art per se, but I would say that I am communicating my observations and my beliefs about life and society and how I see things. And I'm not necessarily trying to preach any ideas by any means either. I just draw what I feel. And oftentimes what I feel is, like you were saying, this kind of end of the world, whether it's like my own world feels like it's going to end because I'm having like an issue, or I like one of my all-time favorite music groups is Muse, and they're from the UK. Muse. Their lyrics are all dystopian, end of the world, the government and Big Brother and thought police and all that. And I don't want to make necessarily as strong as statements as they do, because I don't necessarily feel as detailed as they do. But like I vibe 100% with the kind of sticking it to the man mentality when the man deserves things to be stuck to them. Like when things are wrong, like I like to be able to at least express that in my art, but I don't want that message to crowd the piece necessarily. It's more like just like my own beliefs and observations are more just like the details in the piece rather than the entirety.
How much do you reckon that that kind of? I mean, that's always when someone says, when I hear these say that really reminds me of just kind of that punk type of vibe. Did you find that this this field, like Web3, is a good stage for that? For that kind of sticking it to the man? Is it easier to release your kind of art and things you want to say with your art within Web3 as it is, on another platform?
Oh my gosh. I think Web3 is the place to stick it to the man. Every man that needs to be stuck to. Like Web3 is the big revolution, in my opinion.
Sticking it to the man when it needs to be stuck to. I'm loving it. This is awesome.
Yeah, I truly feel like Web3 is like the ultimate revolution of our time. I feel like as far as art specifically is concerned, like not only is this a huge renaissance period for art and literature and music with the blockchain technology, and a technological renaissance as well. But like, I mean, the disruptive nature of blockchain technology and Web3 is its foundation. And I think that sets the perfect stage for like that punk mentality, that stick it to the man. I think that is what this whole decentralized movement is about.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so much about empowerment as well. It's like that. Like you saying about you and Twick, you just kind of get together and there are no boundaries. You can just literally just go and create art, put it out, move on to the next one. So no, I'm yeah, I'm constantly impressed when I hear people say that. So my hat's off to you, man.
I was going to say that we've talked about this before, but there's this kind of DIY scene vibe to much of the sort of artist community, which we are super keen to kind of promote and to encourage. But that kind of comes out of that punk and post-punk sort of, you form a band, you create your own gigs, you make your own records, and it's that's that whole kind of ethos, I think, that informs what people like us, hopefully, and what you guys are doing. But it made me want to ask, are you creating entirely in digital these days, or do you make sort of physical art as well?
So these days I've been doing mostly digital. I haven't taken a brush to a canvas in probably 5 months since things really started moving with the digital artwork.
Yeah.
But I like to play with, like, it's still digital, but I feel like there's a lot of fun that can come out of taking pictures and bringing them into Procreate and After Effects and the other virtual like systems that I use, to kind of like take things that are physical and kind of digitize them and bring them into the medium. I feel like Web3, and NFTs as a medium demands digital creation because it's that new, I mean, it's the new medium. It's like when I make a still image, I'm almost like, this doesn't work for this medium. Like, it should move, at least have a sound with it or something that brings it into its medium. More than I think a still image would, but I still release still images and I still love them and I have nothing against them. But I think the medium itself like is really demanding, in a good way. And so I used to take a lot of sketches and bring them into, and digitize them, or I would do ink on paper. With some of my previous collections, I would do ink on paper, digitize that, and then maybe fix a line or two or something, add a texture digitally. But anymore, other than like rough thumbnail sketches in my notebook or anything like that, like anymore, it's a lot of straight, like tablet, stylus to tablet kind of creation.
And where does that happen? Like in terms of your sort of setting, do you have a studio space, or you set on your couch while you're doing that? What's your setup?
Everywhere I can possibly be, I will go. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I need to change my location a lot, or I need to like have different external stimuli. So like I'll go to a coffee shop, or I'll go to a couch, or I'll I'll be waiting in line and I'll just pull out my sketchbook or something and like get an idea out, or be sitting at the diner. So location is something that needs to be something that changes a lot for me.
That's cool. And that has sorry.
Yeah, I have like I had like an office space, where I would, but that work was different. Like, it's still Web3 work. It's still all the Twitter stuff and all the Discord stuff and everything, the minting and everything that goes kind of the back end behind the art. But as far as creativity goes, full right brain creative mode, it's like I get a little antsy, a little bouncy, and I like to just like move around and sit in different spots and like, change things up. Otherwise, like that stagnant feeling of my external stimuli, I guess you could say, that stagnation would seep into my artwork, and I would feel almost like I couldn't finish whatever I was working on. So if I change location, I can really not only keep working, but like sometimes get even like fresh ideas that I wouldn't have had in the previous location.
But like you touched on like social media. Is there can you do? I'm always curious. Can you do one thing? Can you do both things at the same time? I mean, like you said, can you just sit in your office and do social media? You have to leave, and go somewhere else. I mean, I would have thought, Twitter gets in the way. Like self promotion sometimes gets in the way of the art itself, right? Do you have to set some time aside?
Yeah, I set time aside for Twitter. Like it depends on what I'm doing on Twitter. Like if a thought comes into my head and I'm gonna tweet it, like I'll tweet it right then and there. Or if like the good morning post GMs and stuff like that, I like to keep those very real. But as far as like the self promo stuff, if I think about promotion or releasing it or how I'm going to release it or what the strategy is or whatever the launch plan is for the piece, if I'm thinking about that during the creation aspect of the piece, then it'll muddy the water for sure. And so like promotion type stuff, like if I need to make sure that like for example, right now I've got a couple editions up and they're going to be up for the next few days. And I want to make sure that every day, at least a couple times per day, that I remind Twitter that they're out there and that they're going. And if I get locked into a project, if I get locked into a painting or a piece and I'm really into it and I'm just going with it, I don't want to be like, oh shoot, I forgot to post about the piece that's currently selling right now. I got so busy working on this new piece, I didn't post about this other piece, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want that to get in the way of my flow. So for those types of posts, I usually schedule them out using Twitter for like Twitter on a browser. I'll schedule those posts out, but like as far as like the organic stuff, GMs and replying to people and all that kind of stuff, like there is like a time of day I set aside to go into Twitter and go to reply to people and go to DMs and all of that, because it is a completely different mental landscape than creativity.
And that's just like you've just given me a life lesson there. I really have to do that. Because you say you go to like a coffee shop and I was like, I'd be checking Twitter and Starbucks for 3/4 of an hour before I even do anything. So there's time and place.
Right. And absolutely. Time and place. And you hit the nail on the head. Like you can get on Twitter and just do nothing and get replying and commenting and stuff like that. And there's a balance with each. Like I can't spend all of my time creating and I can't spend all of my time on Twitter. So finding that balance and then finding the time to take the time, be like, okay, for this next hour, I'm just going to be on Twitter. I'm going to reply to everybody's stuff. I'm going to even schedule some stuff for the rest of the week. And then when I'm done, I'm done. And there's sometimes like I don't even have notifications on for Twitter. I don't let it show me like how many notifications like the little red number that pops up next to the app. I don't let it do that for me. Because if I look at my phone to check the time while I'm working on something or in a different mind, I see a notification, I dive into that notification, I might lose focus on what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, I kill all the notifications and just use my allotted time.
And your so you mentioned your edition. Is this the Farmer Puff? Am I looking at?
Yeah, so there is right now I have a couple things out. I kind of had a failed launch that I'm not too happy about, but we live and learn and grow and adapt, and that's the Pharma Pop stuff. So with the Pharma Pop, no, it's all good. It's all good. It's all fine. Pharma Pop is I've got nothing to hide, man. Nothing to hide.
Okay.
Pharma Pop is a project of a very, very limited set of 10 one-of-one art pieces that were made during a time of my life over the summer that was extremely difficult as far as mental health concerns go, and trips to hospital and to doctors' offices and stuff like that. I don't want to get into too many of those details, but my thoughts and experiences and observations during that time lended to the creation of the anti-pops Pharma Pop series, which is what I call like a branch of anti-pop, because I got these images in my head and I was like, this is dangerous. I'm gonna do this, and this is so vibey, of like pigs as pharmacists, and I was like drawing these pigs in white coats and getting different pictures of like people like offering you medication, and they just look like they're insane, and they're just like haha, like crazy faces. And I was going through a lot, and I was channeling all those feelings into this art that I'm still very proud of. This art, I just think the timing of the launch was a flop. I'm like, when I released the pre-reveal into my Discord, I gave it to some holders first, and I said, here is what I'm doing. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here's when it's going to mint, and I want to do a whitelist for it, for about 10 people, because there's only 10, to like get them during pre-sale. And I filled the whitelist for pre-sale, but about a week later, open edition season hit Twitter like an asteroid. And by the time, and then a week went by, and then another week, and then by the time the allotted release date for Pharma Pop went out, I had people in my DMs that were on the whitelist saying, hey, I'm so sorry, but I'm not going to be able to mint Pharma Pop, yada, yada, yada. And I know everyone has projects that they want to get in on, and I know open edition season hit us all by surprise, and everyone wants to get everything, and that's fine. I don't take any of that stuff personally, whether you buy or not, or you let me know you are or you're not. I don't take that stuff personally. I know that we all have our lives. But I had so many people telling me that they couldn't end up getting Pharma Pop that I was like, shoot, well, I'll truncate the pre-sale then and let it up for public, because I did have some really great feedback from my community about Pharma Pop. But again, I think the timing it was bad. It lined up with the Money Never Sleeps Click Card Season 2 launch, which was really highly anticipated, and a lot of people that were signed up for Pharma Pop were also signed up for that as well. And there was Angels and Demons, and there's so many things going on that the launch really just kind of fizzled. And I'm just kind of learning and moving forward from there.
But I mean, that's not without its, that's not without its merit. There's, there is some kind of conceptual continuity, if you like, from what has become what came from Pharma Pop. I'm looking at your work after that. There's a positive forward movement to each collection. So, I think positive things come from it.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Jake, I'm going off on a different tangent completely. Feel free to finish what you were going to
say. No, it's totally fine. I lost my train of thought anyway, so not to worry.
Apologies. I was going to ask what has become, I think, an Arts Play radio staple question, which we're all kind of interested in, which is how do you know when you have finished a piece, a work of art?
Oh my gosh, what a question. I can see why I can see why that's the staple question. Oh. You know what? I don't think they're done at all. I don't think any of them are done. I think I've signed pieces, I've put my signature on pieces, and then I've continued to do things to them. It's when they're minted, and when they're minted and they're purchased by the collector, I think they're done.
That's fair, and at least you've got a point there where you've forced yourself not to be able to do anything else.
But there's a fine line as well. Like, I was scrolling through the anti-pop one of one collection on OpenSea I was just looking at the work that was there. And I can see now that more and more work is being added to that over the last few months, I can see kind of where my own style and interests were going. And there was a few pieces, one that I made for Crooked West and one that I made for Sum of Primes, that I would love to update. I would just love to like update them and make them a little more current to my aesthetic. But at the same time, like, I think they're fine kind of images of what was then, you know what I mean? So there's a fine line there.
Yeah,
that was something.
yeah.
That was something. We. I don't know if I can't remember who we asked that, but it was. It was like that same question. It was like, how do we know? How exactly do we know, like, when something's finished, and do we have to be? Do we necessarily have to be in love with the final? With the final, product of it? Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't think you have to be in love with your final product. I don't think that that's a prerequisite for a completed piece. There was a piece that I made for the Steve project that I wasn't super fond of, but somebody had a very intense emotional reaction to it, and they
This
were
is Believe
deeply
in
connected
Steve,
to the
right?
piece. Yeah, this is Believe in
Right,
Steve.
right,
Yes.
right. Sorry, go on.
No, it's yeah, it's all good. Like Believe in Steve, there's 9 one-of-one Steves. Steve is the name of the character, and one of them features a city kind of growing out of Steve's baseball cap. And I was like, this is kind of basic. The idea looked better in my head, kind of a thing, and I was adding to it and subtracting, and I was like, I don't really dig this, and I think it's kind of basic, but I'm putting it out there because it's aesthetic and it works with the rest of the pieces and it goes with the story that I want to tell, and it looks good. It's just not. I'm not vibing with it. And then one of the collectors like had a deep connection to it. They thought it was the best one that there was. It was the only one for them. So even if you as the artist aren't fully in love with your piece, you don't know how somebody else is going to take it and react to it and what it's going to mean to them.
Well, that's sort of the beauty of it, isn't it? Is that once it's out there, like, it's not yours anymore, because the reaction that people have to it kind of dictates what it is, how it feels to everybody, I guess.
Right, and that's there's also it's a little game to play, a little challenging game to play with deciding, if you don't have one going into the piece, what you're going to title the piece, because I want to keep my work objective. I want you to be able to look at it and have an experience that I would have never expected anyone to have. And a title can guide the experience of the viewer to glean the meaning maybe that you want them to glean. And sometimes I don't want to tell you what the piece is about. I want you to tell me what the piece is about.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and I think that's I've spoken about this with some people recently about sort of abstract art and the value of having a name that works for it, a title that works for it, and like sometimes you do want to guide the viewer or the listener when you're making music into sort of feeling a certain way about it, but it's like a lot of responsibility at the same time.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, a lot of the fun I'm having with art, as opposed to like other mediums like filmmaking, for example, is very, very much about, you need your viewer to feel this way specifically. And we're going to do everything we can to make your viewer feel this way specifically. You want them to cry when it's time to cry and laugh when it's time to laugh, etc. And with art, with fine art, which is, like, in my opinion, art for art's sake, art for the sake of art, art that doesn't need to serve a purpose. You don't have to deliver such a hardcore, like, set in stone meaning per each image. You can have that freedom to kind of, like you said, give it away, and let, especially like you said with abstract work, you can put a very, very interesting composition together and title it something like Number 5, and then the viewer has to make up their own meaning. They have no choice. right? You kind of strip that choice from them when you just give the painting like, oh, untitled number 3, and then the viewer's like, whoa, gosh. But even then, like, number 3 implies that there's 1, 2, 4, 5, so there's so much that you can do in the game of playing with your audience's perception. It just depends on what you want to do with that specific piece.
I think me and Ike have had that conversation a little bit. We when it comes to music, we're quite interested in noise, and it was funny to say the thing about not projecting too much on it, because I think it was it his name escapes me. Was it Jack, the guy who did, he also put out the just the static.
Yeah,
ring.
yeah, that
Yeah,
was
it's
Jack.
yeah, Jack, and it was like it's kind of like, this is what it is, and you have to choose whatever whatever you see in it and how long you want to look at it for, and I like that idea of keeping it totally open. And do you think it's your background in performance has anything to has influences, like the way of looking at things?
Absolutely. I think that my background in performance has helped me, like, as far as like being an artist goes. It helps me like keep my like Twitter brand, I guess you could say, like, consistent, because like
Right.
I mean, I try, like, with my language and the way I post, it's not like I'm a robot, or if I'm putting on a show, or like I have a stage name or anything. Like, I'm fully doxxed. Like, this is my name. I have nothing to hide. Um, so like, but the performance aspect helps me stay like, yeah, this is a show. This is a big show. And the name of the show here is Jake Zelinger at art, right? And here is the art of Jake Zelinger. And doesn't, like, in show business, in the show, you need people to come to your show. Whether they like it or not, you need people to at least look at it. And
Right.
so, like, that's the big performance, in my opinion, is Twitter, is like getting, whether it's through self-promotion or otherwise, getting people to look at my art is like the performance aspect of it.
Do you think you put yourself under any pressure by using your own name? Like, if you're in
Yes.
a band, you do. Yeah, I mean, you can't just
Yes.
change your name.
No. Like, but I
Ultimate
also like,
performance.
yeah, exactly. Just changes his name.
Right.
No, it's challenging. There is a lot of, well, I wouldn't say there's a lot of pressure, but there are different pressures. And like, like you said, like, if I was to like rug the whole thing, like do a Sartoshi, like I would have to legally change my name. I would like have to do so many things to try to do that same kind of, oh, I'm an anon artist and I can just rug the whole community or whatever. Like, I couldn't do that, even if that was part of the roadmap, which it's most definitely not. And that's part of the reason I am fully like here and using my own name, is the message that I'm trying to deliver by being myself in this space, is that I am myself, that I'm a real human being, that I have real art and real emotions, and I'm really here in the metaverse, in Web3, creating. I don't have anything against people that are hiding their identity. Everyone has their own thoughts and reasons for doing anything that they do, and that is totally fine. I just wanted to do something that was true to me and true to myself, just like I'm sure anybody like X-Copy or whoever is doing what's true to them and what's best for themselves.
Can I ask what your sort of ambitions are from here on in?
Yes. So my ambitions from here on in are to take it full time. I'm super close to being full time. I know that it probably looks full timey on Twitter, but I do keep it that way. But I don't have like a day job or anything right now. I used to be a high school teacher. I'm teaching film production and video production, but I just do freelance stuff on the side. And so my ambitions are here after I go full time. I really am looking to create, and what I want to create, what I seek to create with every piece that I do make, is something that can be something that can add up to the grander tapestry of this time. When we look at the picture of this time in 20 years, in 40 years, in 100 years, I am really seeking to create art that can serve as cultural artifacts of our time, much like a Jackson Pollock would serve as a cultural artifact of the 1950s, or an Andy Warhol of the 1960s. I would like a Jake Zelinger piece to be looked at as, a signature thing that happened during this time.
Hell yeah. Ike, have you got a massive smile on your face when he said that?
Yeah, man, it's
Man,
ridiculous.
right on, dude.
Incredibly inspiring, and thanks so much for taking the time out to chat to us today, Jake. We'd love to have you back on again at some stage, because I think we could probably talk about lots of this stuff for a lot longer. But as it is, I feel like my voice is going to go, so apologies. Thanks again. Just want to tell anyone who's listening or who listens in future that this is from the Cool Dudes Club is our little group, and we will be hosting an event in as part of NFT London, or a side event on the 4th of November at a little pub in Mayfair. We'll have some people doing art, and we'll have some free drinks and stuff like that, and we will get some details of tickets out there pretty soon. That's all thanks to the patronage of the amazing Lux, who has been pretty helpful and influential, I think, in all of our endeavors. Keep an eye out. Look out for the stuff coming from us, and look out for more excellent work from Jake Zelinger, who, we think is amazing. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks so much, Jay. Absolutely amazing.
This was, thank you, man. It was a pleasure to be here. Absolutely. Highlight of my day. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Good work.
Come back next week, and we will be talking with Epic Thundercat. All right. Thanks very much, guys. We will see you again soon.
Good night.